All right, before we start, so please, everyone can open your camera, please. Okay. Okay, in 5 minutes, we can start our conference. Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon,
Indonesia.
everyone. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Miftah Falah. I'm a lecturer at the Faculty of Health and Science in at Universitas Muhammadiyah Tasikmalaya. And I will be serving as your moderator for these sessions. It is a great honor to welcome you all the International Conference on Interdisciplinary for Sustainable Development or INTERDIS in 2025. Organized by APTISI Commissariat 6B in collaboration with Universitas Informatika and Business Indonesia, UNIBI. We truly appreciate your presence today and hope this session will insightful and engaging for everyone. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, before we begin, I would like to briefly introduce our distinguished speaker for this session. So we have six presenters. So first is Lilis Sulastri with the title Evaluation of Waste Reduction Index and Conversion Efficiency in the Bioprocessing of Fish-Bone Waste using Hermesia Illusions. And for the second one is Sahid Jundullah with the title EA Chatbot Integration on the New Student Admission Information landing page of Muhammadiyah University of Tasikmalaya to improve serving efficiency. And the third is Aris Setiabudi with the title Analysis of Waste Degradation and Optimizations of the Final Disposal Zone Utilization at Ciangir landfill, Tasikmalaya City using a dynamic system approach. And the fourth one is Muhammad Iqbal Sabik with the title is Factor associated with the quality of the life children with thalassemia in the General Hospital, Dr. Soekarjo Tasikmalaya. And the next one is Upit Siti Sarah with the title Parenting Stress of Long Distance Marriage Families. And the last one is Intan Putri Pitriani with the title is Beyond Economics Barriers, Multifactorial Analysis of Incomplete Basic Immunization and Economic Condition on the incident of stunting in toddler from underprivileged families. All right. Before the present session begins, I kindly remind all participants first to maintain order and keep microphone mute during the presentations, and then post your question in the chat box or use the raise hand feature, and then participate actively during the Q&A session after each presentation. Your cooperation will ensure a smooth and productive sessions. Without further ado, I'm pleased to invite the first speaker, Lilis Sulastri, to present the topic evaluation of waste reduction index, and conversions efficiency in the bioprocessing of fishbone waste using the Hermesia illusions. For Lilis Sulastri, the floor is yours. Hello, Lilis, you are here. So, Rafi, you can help the Lilis to present, please.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Greeting to all of us. Good morning and good morning spirit. Dear community, moderator, speaker, and all participants to 2025 International Conference I am proud of. Previously, I introduced myself to Lili Sulastri, a student in Environmental Engineering Study Program, Faculty Engineering, University Muhammadiyah of Tasikmalaya. On this occasion, I will present a scientific article as a result of the collaboration between me and Miss Esti Novianti, Miss Meli Melinawati, Mr. Nurhali Salman, and Miss Sally Anggia Murni. I will brief explain a scientific article titled Evaluation of Waste Reduction Index and Conversion Efficiency in the Bioprocessing of Fishbone Waste using Hermetia Illusions. The background of this article is a significant portion of organic waste in Indonesia originates from the expanding fisheries sector. According to data from the Ministry of Marine Affairs and Fisheries, the country will capture fish production reached 11.30 million tons in the first half of 2024. It is estimated 30% to 5% of the total fish biomass become waste, primarily bone, fish scales, and heads. Studies show that industrial tuna processing alone can result 25 to 50% waste, with significant portion coming for fish head and bones. Improper handling of this byproduct can contribute to serious environmental pollution. Although they possess high potential for valorization into gelatin, calcium, salts, and bioactive products, the support circular economy initiative. Tuna bone are underutilized despite their high nutritional value, so that improper disposal can lead to odors and water pollution. BSF larvae offer a sustainable solution for organic waste processing by means of bioconversion of fish bone. This study focused of the parameter of the waste reduction and index and efficiency of conversion of digested fat. Based on this background, the objectives of the research are 1. To evaluate the effect of feed rate and the bioconversion efficiency of tuna bone waste. 2. Analyze performance of waste reduction index and efficiency of conversion of digested feed. The methodology as in this study is an experimental method. Experimental design using completed random design. Exit 5 treatment, namely 2 grams, 4 gram, 6 gram, 8 gram, and 10 gram for 20 larvae. 3 repetition H. The parameters measured are waste reduction index and efficiency of conversion of digested fat. Research result: after an 8-day maintenance period, the larva saw morphological change and weight gain as a result of the bioconversion process of corn, fish, bone waste. The effectiveness of the bioconversion process was evaluated using the waste reduction index parameter, which describe the ability of larvae to reduce fat waste during the study period. The WRI value is calculated based on the ratio of fat given to the rest of the feed, taking into account the time and number of larvae used. Based on figure, the trend of decreasing the value of the waste reduction index is along with the increase in variation in feed ratio treatment A to E. The WRI value is found in treatment A, 2 grams to 20 larvae of 11.76%. Then decreases gradually until it reaches the lowest value in treatment E of 7.91%. This pattern of decline shows that the higher the amount of feed given, the relative declining efficiency of the larva in reduction waste. WRI has decreased with the increase in the amount of feed. The decrease in WRI can be indicated as a larva response to overfeeding and reduce digestive efficiency. Next, the efficiency of conversion of the digested feed value function of determine the efficiency of the amount of corn-borne feed that has been successfully digested or converted into larva bios during the 8-day maintenance period. ECD describes the extent to which BSF larvae are able to utilize the feed consumed for larva body weight growth. Value of efficiency conversion of digested feed is each variation of feed ratio treatment. The graph shows the treatment A products the highest ECD value of 5.89%, while the lowest value was found in treatment C of 3.85%. After a decrease in treatment B and C, ECD value increased again in treatment D and E, although they did not reach the same values in treatment E. A high ECD value indicates that most of the digested feed is optimally utilized by the larva, while the feed level in improving digestion of conversion so that the feed ratio greatly affects the effectiveness of the larva in reducing and digesting the feed that is given. Next, conclusion and recommendation. Based on the result of the research that has been conducted, it can be concluded that lower feeding rate result in higher waste reduction and conversion efficiency. 2. Bioconversion using BSF hold promise to sustainable fish waste management, recommended for small scale and community-based waste treatment system. This is the percentage that I can convey regarding the article Athletic Evaluation of Waste Reduction Index and Conversion Efficiency in the Bioprocessing of Fishbone waste using Hermetia Illusion, which I complete with Miss Esti Novianti, Miss Meli Melinawati, Mr. Nurholis Saman, and Miss Sally Anggia Murni. I realize that this research still has limitations and is very open to future input and discussion. Thank you for attention and opportunity. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much for Lilis, who already give us some insightful presentation. Now we move on to our Q&A sessions. Due to time the constraints, we were taking only one or two questions from the audience. Okay, let me see. There is a question or not. So, Lilis, you are still here, or uh, you still cannot answer the questions? So, if you cannot answer the question right now, so I will give you the time, and then I will move to the another presenter first, and then in the end of this session, so you can answer the question. So, but before we continue to the next, I will uh, write your question first. Wait. Okay, because there are a lot of questions here. So I just choose ones for you for the release. Okay, wait. Mm, Okay, okay, Lilis, you have first questions here. So how effective is the waste the reductions and the feed digestibility of BSF larvas? So you can keep this question first if you still can answer right now. So please, I just mention again. The question is how effective. Yeah, I hope you can write down the question and then you can answer later. Okay. How effective is the waste reductions and the feed digestibility of the BSF larvas? Okay. Okay. You got it ready, Lilis? So later you can answer. Okay. Oh, I see. Oh, I see. You already answered the questions. So okay, if BSF larvae are effective, they can reduce waste by up to 11%. Okay, that's great. So BSF larvae can be used as an effective waste reducer. All right, good. Okay, so that is the answer. So you can see the chat box. There is the answer in the chat box, so you can see again, and then I can see this answer is great. So I think this already answered of the questions. Okay. All right. Okay, we can move to another ones. Okay. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we can move to another ones. But before we continue for the next presenter, so I just remind you that this presenting only 10 minutes, so you have time for the 10 minutes to present, and then after that you can answer the questions. Okay, I think you get it already. So, okay, For the next one is Sahid Jundullah with the title AA Chatbook Integration of the New Student Admission Information Landing Page of Universitas Muhammadiyah University of Tasikmalaya to improve service efficiency. Okay, for the Sahid Jundullah, the floor is yours. Okay, please, Rafi. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. First, let me introduce myself. My name is Syahidullah, and I am a student of Information Technology Education at Muhammadiyah University of Tasikmalaya. Today, I will be presenting my research on AI chatbot integration for the information delivery services for new student admission to improve service efficiency. This presentation will cover the background of the problem, the current state of our information delivery services, the challenges we face, and how AI chatbot technology can provide an effective solution. Okay, first I want to introduce the importance of information delivery services for new student admission. Providing accurate, timely, and easily accessible information is essential not only for prospective students but also for strengthening the university reputation. Here, I'm explaining the two main channels for the new student admission information delivery services, offline and online. Offline service is the traditional face-to-face interaction at the information center. Online service is provided through WhatsApp application, allowing us to often personalize assistance while requiring prospective students to visit the campus. Now that we know the two main types of services, let's identify where the actual problem lies. We need to understand what factors are slowing down our response times and limiting accessibility for prospective students. The main focus of our problem analysis is the online service, specifically WhatsApp application. This is because most prospective students prefer online communication. One of the most common problems occurs when prospective students start questions outside working hours. Here's a real example. A prospective student sent a question at almost midnight. Because our service is inactive, they have to wait until the next morning for a reply. Next, this example still another common problem, message overload. From the previous analysis, we identify two major problems. The first, delay response to user inquiries, and second, the limited scope of information they received. For this study, I used the research and development approach, adapting the AD model. In the analysis phase, I examined the existing information delivery services for new student admission system by using WhatsApp application, best interaction handled by admission staff. I applied the pieces framework focused specifically on performance and efficiency. From the performance analysis, the response time was significantly slow, nearly 48 minutes per message. Processing time was also high, exceeding 1 hour and 40 minutes per message. This is efficiency analysis. Okay, the next, this diagram. On the left, we have the admin, who is responsible for three main tasks: logging into the dashboard, managing the student admission information contents, and managing the AI chatbot. On the right, we have the visitor or the prospective student. They interact with the system by accessing the landing page. The slide shows the design of the new student admission information delivery landing page. We also provide a QR code the user can scan with their mobile device to directly visit the landing page. In the slide, we can see the importance achieved after implementation the AI chatbot system. Response time dropped from almost 48 minutes to just over 10 seconds per message. Processing time decreased from over an hour and 40 minutes to under 3 minutes. And another important in conclusion, the chatbot system has proven to deliver new student admission information quickly, accurately, and without the limit of working hours. Thanks for watching. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Okay, well done. Okay, for Sahid, yeah. Okay, Sahid. Thank you for the great presentation. So now we can move to the Q&A. So I already got the message about your question. So wait a minute. Okay. All right. Okay, Shahid. You hear my voice, Shahid? Okay.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. All right. The question is, what are the main benefits of having an EA chatbot on the new student admission information page for the prospective students? Okay, you got it?
Okay. Thanks,
Okay,
sir.
you can. Okay, please answer, please. Thank you.
The story in comic
Thanks
depict
about
every
your question. Okay.
And this is
The main benefits is immediate and continuous access to information. Before the chatbot AI was integrated, prospective students often rely on office hours staff available to get responses. This means that if they ask a question outside of working hours, they had to wait sometimes for almost an hour. With the chatbot AI directly embedded and on the admission landing page, information becomes available instantly at any time of the day.
More easier without
Another key benefit is convenience. Since the chatbot AI is located on the same page where prospective students usually search from admission details, they don't need to open another application, make phone calls. The chatbot can answer frequently asked questions
That's always
about admission requirement, registration procedure, or schedule in a just second. From the perspective of service quality, this integration also enhances efficiency. Prospective students save time and effort when seeking information, while staff workloads are reduced because repetitive questions are handled automatically. As a result, staff can on more complex or personal inquiries. In short, the chatbot AI provides faster responses, 24/7 availability, reliable information, and smoother user experience, which collectively improve the overall efficiency of the admission service. And maybe enough, sir.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Said. Okay,
Okay,
that's
yeah.
clear. So, I
That's
hope
good.
your answer can answer the questions. Okay, thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Thanks, sir.
Okay, thank you so much, Sahid, for both the presentation and your insightful answers. So, ladies and gentlemen, let us now continue with our next presentation. I'm delighted to invite the next presenter is Aris Setiabudi. Okay, Aris Setiabudi will present about the analysis of the waste degradation and optimization of the vinyl disposal zones utilizations at the Ciangir landfill, Tasikmalaya City, using a dynamic system approach. Okay, the floor, Aris Setiabudi, floor is yours.
Hello everyone, let me introduce myself. I am Arsya Budi from Muhammadiyah University of Tasikmalaya. Here I will present an article entitled Analysis of Waste Degradation and Optimization of Final Disposal Zone Utilization at Ciangir Landfill Tasikmalaya City using a dynamic system approach. First, there is the abstract. It explained that the Ciangir landfill is currently experiencing overcapacity. Therefore, this study aims to analyze waste degradation and optimize landfill zone utilization using a dynamic system approach. The study simulates 3 waste management scenarios. The scenarios will inform waste management policy recommendation, and the most effective scenario for waste degradation will be selected. Next is the introduction. It explains that the Ciangir landfill is experiencing overcapacity due to the lack of optimal waste management, where the landfill still uses an open dumping system, allowing waste to decompose into organic matter. This study will model a dynamic strategy that can degrade waste and extend the landfill's lifespan by simulating 3 waste management scenarios and then recommending the most effective scenario. Next, we discuss the research methodology. This study uses a quantitative descriptive approach with dynamic system modeling to analyze waste management at the Ciangir landfill. The research object is the existing waste management system at the Ciangir landfill. Data analysis was conducted through simulation modeling using FENSIM software. Selected waste management scenarios were tested and analyzed to determine the most effective scenario for implementation. Next are the results and discussion. Based on the table, it can be seen that waste generation is related to population size, meaning that as population increases, waste generation also increases. Next, there is the causal loop diagram. The purpose of creating a causal loop diagram is to identify all variables related to waste management at the Ciangir landfill in Tasikmalaya City. Next is the stock and flow diagram. Stock and flow diagram is used to visualize the structure and behavior of a system as it changes over time. The SFD will show changes in population, GDP, compressor capacity, and landfill capacity each year. The simulating results show an increase in population of 4.4% per year, an increase in GRDP of 6.5% per year, an increase in compressor capacity requirement of 40%, and an increase in landfill capacity requirement of 84% per year. Next, we present the result of the waste generation simulation. Based on the simulation result, waste production continues to increase by more than 1% per year, in line with population growth and GDP growth. Next, model validation. Model validation was conducted to demonstrate the model's accuracy. Validation was conducted on historical waste and population data for Tasikmalaya City from 2020 to 2024 based on the model validation result. Next, alternative policy scenarios were considered. Based on simulation result, the reduction at short and optimization scenarios were proven to degrade 48% of organic waste and 85% of waste generated at the landfill, with a landfill lifespan of approximately 7 years. Next, the conclusion. The dynamic system approach successfully mapped the causal relationship between each variable at the Siangir landfill. Furthermore, the source reduction and landfill optimization scenarios were proven to extend the landfill's lifespan and degrade waste within the landfill. Okay, that's all my presentation. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you very much for the Aris Setiabudi for your presentation. That is a good presentation. So, okay, we can move to the Q&A. So, I already got your questions. So, let me read your question first. Okay, wait, let me open it. Wait. Okay. Okay, for Aris. Aris, you are here? So I will read your questions. So your question is, what scenarios are analyzed in the simulation and how to implement them? Again, what scenarios are analyzed in the simulation and how to implement them? Okay, you got it, Aris? So please the answer. Oh, okay. You answer in the chat box. Okay. Yes, this. Okay, let me read your answer. So, three scenarios were analyzed in the simulation: the business as usual scenario, the registration at short scenario, and the landfill optimization scenario. The business as usual scenario was implemented through an open dumping waste management system with the landfill lifespan of the approximately 2 years. Oh, I see. It's quite long. Okay, the reduction at the short scenarios was implemented through composting at the landfill, and this was proven. Okay, it's already proven. Okay, to increase the landfill lifespan to 3 years. Oh, okay. Meanwhile, the landfill optimization scenario was implemented through the procurement of the incinerations equipment and landfill, which was proven to increase the landfill lifespan to 4 years since the landfill was operation. Okay, thank you very much for your answer, Aris. Okay, I think this is the great answer for the questions. Okay, thank you very much for the great presenters. So we will move to the next presenters. So for the next presenter, we have the Muhammad Iqbal As-Sabiq, with the title Factor Associated with the Quality of Life Children's with the Thalassemia in the General Hospital, Dr. Sukarjo Tasikmalaya. All right, for the Muhammad Iqbal As-Sabiq, time is yours.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Let me
Waalaikumsalam
introduce
warahmatullahi.
myself. My name is Muhammad Iqbal As-Sabiq. Hello everyone. Today I will present your research entitled Factor Relates to the Quality of Life of Children with Thalassemia at the Sukarjo Regional General Hospital in Tasikmalaya. The study was conducted by a team of researchers from the Department of Nursing, Faculty of Health Science, Muhammadiyah University of Tasikmalaya. Your team consisted of 6 members who collaborated in data collection, analysis, and writing of the study. Abstract. This research used a cross-sectional design with a total of 39 children diagnosed with thalassemia to measure quality of life. We affiliate the Pediatric Quality of Life Inventory or PDSQL. The data were then analyzed using Fisher-Exart test. The finding revealed significant association between hemoglobin level, the presence of comorbidities, transfusion frequency, and the overall quality of life of these children. Introduction. Thalassemia is a hereditary blood disorder that leads to chronic anemia in West Java. It remains a serious health problem, not only because of its medical complication, but also because of this psychological and social impact. Children with thalassemia face a triple burden: physical limitation, emotional challenge, and social difficulties. Their quality of life is strongly influenced by biological factors such as hemoglobin levels, medical conditions including comorbidities, and the frequency of blood transfusion required. Methodology. This study employed a quantitative cross-sectional design. The total population consisted of 71 children with thalassemia, and from this group, 39 participants were selected to use consecutive sampling that were collected with the Pediatric Quality of Life Inventory. We analyze the data using frequency, distribution, and Fisher-Exart test to explore relationship between the variables. The research was carried out between September 2024 and January 2025 at Dr. Sukarjo Hospital in Tasikmalaya. Result: hemoglobin. The first finding concerned hemoglobin level. We found the 87.2% of the children had pre-transfusion hemoglobin levels below 9 grams per deciliter. Statistically, how hemoglobin levels were significant associated with a poor quality of life with a p-value of 0.019 and odds ratio of 50.5. This means that children with low hemoglobin had 15 times higher rates of having adequate quality of life compared to those with adequate hemoglobin levels. Result: comorbidities. Next, we look at comorbidities. About 59% of the participants experienced other health conditions such as tuberculosis, splenomegaly, diabetes, or infection. That presence of these comorbidities significantly lowered quality of life with a p-value of 0.033 and an odds ratio on 10. This indicates that children with comorbidities were 10 times more likely to experience poor physical and emotional function. Result transfusion frequency. Other important factor was the frequency of blood transfusion. We observed that 61.5% of the children required transfusion more the 12 months. This high transfusion frequency has significantly associated with poor quality of life with a p-value of 0.024 and an odds ratio of 11.5. This result suggests that frequent transfusion may create not only physical complications such as iron overload, but also psychosocial stress for both children and families. Discussion hemoglobin. In the part we discussed the impact of low hemoglobin. Children with low hemoglobin often experience limited physical activity, delayed growth, and increased fatigue. This condition reduce their overall quality of life and daily functioning, or when are consistent with the result of Presetia in 2019, who also explicit the strong relationship between hemoglobin level and children's well-being. However, our research differ from the study by Auliana and Asi in 2024, which suggested that hemoglobin was not the only determining factor. This difference highlights the importance of comprehensive care or strong family support, which can help children adapt better to low hemoglobin levels. Discussion comorbidities. In this section, we focus on comorbidities. The presence of comorbid condition has been shown to worsen health outcomes for children with thalassemia. This is supported by studies conducted by Lanasa in 2013 and Mandia in 2024. However, the negative impact of comorbidities can be reduced when social support, economic stability, and adaptive coping strategies are in place. This finding emphasizes the need for integrated management of underlying disease, where medical treatment is combined with social and family support to improve the quality of life patterns. Discussion transfusion frequency. Or we discuss the impact of transfusion frequency. Frequency transfusion can lead to iron overload, present fatigue, and increased psychosocial stress, both for the children and their families. This finding is supported by research from Armenia in 2021 and Aziza in 2024. However, some other studies have reported no significant association between transfusion frequency and quality of life. This suggests that the effect might vary from one patient to other, highlighting the importance of individualist transfusion planning in outer world. As children's transfusion schedule should be careful, educate according to their unequal clinical condition and psychosocial needs. In conclusion, most of the children in our study had low hemoglobin levels, suffered from comorbidities, and required frequent blood transfusion. All of these factors had a significant negative impact on their quality of life. Therefore, strategies To improve outcomes, SALT focus on maintaining optimal hemoglobin levels, providing proper management for comorbidities, and careful adjusting transfusion schedule. By addressing this key factor, we can help enhance both the physical health and overall well-being of children living with thalassemia. In addition, we recommended several actions for healthcare providers and hospital. First, patient and family education must be improved so that they understand how to manage thalassemia effectively. Second, comprehensive management of complications should be integrated into care plans. Third, promising health lifestyle can support children's overall well-being. For regular monitoring of hemoglobin levels and transfusion schedule should be educated. Finally, collaboration with thalassemia support group is essential to provide community-based assistance and emotional support for parents and families. Reference. This study is supported by recent and relevant reference, including the Minister of Health of Indonesia in 2024, Prasetya in 2019, Lanasa in 2013, Mardiah in 2024, Armina in 2021, and Aziza in 2024. This reference strengthen the validity of our finding and provide a basis for future research in this area. Thank you for attention. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Okay, Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Okay, that is such a great or excellent presentation, Iqbal. Okay, thank you very much. So we have now reached our Q&A and discussion segments. We have received several questions from the participant, but due to the time constraints, we will select only one question for our speaker. The question is what is the primary objective of this research or journal article? You got it, Iqbal?
Yes.
Okay, just answer.
Thank you very much for attending question. The primary objective of this study is to identify the factor associated with the quality of life of children with thalassemia at Dr. Soekarjo Regional General Hospital in Tasikmalaya, including pre-transfusion hemoglobin levels, comorbidities, and transfusion frequency, which are examined in relation to the quality of life of thalassemia children. Maybe that's all I can assure.
Sure. All right, thank you very much for the great answer, Muhammad Iqbal Sabit. Okay, coming from UNDAS, yeah? All right. Okay, thank you very much. So, for the next presenter, I will call the great next presenter, Upit Siti Sarah, with the title Parenting Stress of Long Distance Marriage Families. Okay. Upit, you are here?
Yes, I'm here, Mister.
Okay. Just here you go.
Okay, good afternoon everyone. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I would like to greet the honorable ladies and gentlemen who are present at today's conference forum, as well as the participants who have joined it. Before we begin, let me introduce myself. My name is Upit Siti Sarah from Muhammadiyah University of Tasikmalaya also, and I'm majoring in early childhood education. I have just completed my fourth semester. Ladies and gentlemen, today I will present a material from an article or paper that was created by myself and my team on a topic that I find very interesting and which remains an unresolved issue, namely is parenting stress in long-distance marriage families. And below are the name of those involved in writing this time. Upit Sitasarah is me, and Mrs. Rika Surtika Dewi, Mrs. Nandini Huda Anggarasari, Mr. Elvan Vanhas Kwamaini, Mr. Pajar Nugraha, and also the last is Irmayanti. Next. Okay, let's go to strike to the first slide, namely the introduction, where it is written here. The first is globalization and career demands have transformed traditional family structure. And second is long-distance marriage, or we can call LDM, is increasingly common, with 15% of Southeast Asia's family affected. And Indonesian ranked third in LDM prevalence after the Philippines and Vietnam. Main effect from introduction is increased parenting stress for the primary caregiver. And symptoms include chronic fatigue, anxiety disorder, and parenting burnout. And the last is children's physical development is also affected. Next is regarding cultural factors in Indonesia, or what are the causes of this problem being so widespread in our country. The cultural factor in Indonesia, we have the one is strong kinship system, acts as a double-edged sword, and provides support through extended family networks. The third is also increases social pressure on the primary caregiver. And next is traditional expectation influence stress perception and coping. And next is multidisciplinary approach needed to address parenting stress in LDA. The last is based on family stress theory and parental stress model frameworks. There are of six the many factors that occur in Indonesia. Most of these factors occur or arise from the family environment itself. The next slide is on the next slide. There are several theories from scientists and researchers that explain the causes of stress in the family environment. It's family stress theory from Hill in 1958. The one explain family responses to stressors through the ABCX model. Hill developed a theory called ABCX, which A is stressor, external like a job loss, disasters, and internal like marital conflict. And the B is family research, like social support, cohesion, and the last is communication. And the C is appraisal of stressor, like a threat versus challenge. And the last, X is crisis occurs if stressors are high and research are low. And the last, crisis impact parenting function. What will happen when this parenting crisis reaches its peak? And the happen is impact of crisis on parenting. The first is parents may become less patient, more irritable, or write down. And the second is difficulty providing supervision and consistent discipline. And the third is focus shift to survival rather than emotional needs of the child. And next is parenting style may become harsh or overly permissive. And increased parenting conflict between partners. And the last, is about reduced quality of child simulation. From all of this, we can conclude the children will be the source of the impact of the parenting crisis. Okay, the next is about parental stress model, which we have presented by Abidin in 1995. The one is focus on the parent's individual stress experience. And the second is three main domains like parents, child, and life stress. And the third is parents like mental health, personality, and self-confidence. And the next is child like temperament, challenging behavior, and health condition. And we have life stress like relationship conflict, financial strain, and isolation. And the last is about high stress reduced quality of parent-child interaction. Next. Okay, for the next is part more regarding the research methodology for this problem. It is taken from various trusted and updated search. Like research methodology is one like we have systematic literature review approach, and second is searches by Google Scholar, Scopus, and Science Direct. And the keyword is parenting stress, long distance marriage. And next is thematic analysis used to identify partners and findings. And the last is summary table of key research result and created. Okay, next is about the result and discussion of this problem, where we have summarized the result as follows. Result and discussion is, we have the first is main causes of the stress, role imbalance, limited social support, and communication barriers. And the second is we have parent impact, like 54% depression rate, high economic burden. Child impact, attachment disorder, social adjustment problems, and effective coping, like structured technology, community support, and inclusive policies. And we have care burden mostly borne by women in 68%. And the last is about technology-based intervention effective for millennials family. Okay, and the final discussion is regarding conclusion and recommendation. We have conclusion and recommendation. Like one, parenting stress in LDM is multidimensional. And effective intervention focus on parenting skills and emotional regulation. Like need strong social support networks and family-friendly policies. And conduct longitudinal studies on child development in LDM. And study the role of a traditional caregivers like grandparents and nannies. And the last is reduce stigma in help seeking and expand access to service. Maybe, perhaps that's enough for my presentation in this time regarding parenting stress in long-distance marriage. All participants are welcome to ask me the question if they want to or have question, and we can discuss them.
Okay, thank you very much, Upit Siti Sarah. Your presentation is really great. Okay, we can move to the Q&A after this. So just close your screens first, and then let me see, there is a question for you. Wait a minute. Okay, wait. Okay. Okay, I got two questions for you. So please write down the question first. Okay, can LDM influence the emotional development or early childhood? You got it?
Yes, I got it, Mr.
Okay. Let's answer, please.
Thank you for question. Okay, can LDM influence the emotional development of early childhood?
Mhm.
And the answer is absolutely yes. As explained in the previous slide, the impact of this problem is on children, one of the which is that children may feel unsafe or worried because of their parents don't live together. This can cause or affect a children's confidence and emotional stability. But, however, the many impacts LDM on children's emotional development can be minimized if parents have an open community or good communication, then consistent improvement, Mister, as well as emotional support of courses. By doing that, we can reduce all the impacts that will occur. I think my answer is enough, Mister.
All right, thank you very much, Upit Siti Sarah, uh, for your good response of your questions. All right, because the time, so we will move to the next presenter. So let me see, there are still one or the last of the presenter of this room. So now we have Intan Putri Pitriani will present about the beyond economics theory, multifactorial analysis of incomplete basic immunization and economic condition uh, on the incident of stunting in toddlers from the underprivileged families. All right, for Intan Putri Pitriani, time is yours.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning and greeting to all. First of all, I would like to express my deepest gratitude to my supervisor, examiner, and all attendees who have given me the opportunity to present the result of this research. I am Intan Putri Pitriani, will present the result of my research entitled Beyond Economic Barriers, a multifactorial analysis of incomplete basic immunization and economic condition on the incident of stunting in toddlers from underprivileged families. As a first step in presentation, I will begin by presenting a research abstract to outline our study. Stunting is one of the critical public health problems in Indonesia with a national prevalence of 21.6% in 2022. In the working area of Kawalu Public Health Center, the prevalence of stunting reached 90.20% in 2023. The study aims to analyze the relationship between incomplete basic immunization and the economic condition of recovered families with the incident of stunting in toddlers and who identified the most prominent factor influencing stunting in Talagasari statistic. Method. This is a quantitative study using an analytic observational design with a cross-sectional approach. The population consisted of all toddlers in Talagasari district, totaling 477 children. A sample of 83 toddlers was selected using simple random sampling. Data were collected through structured questionnaire and anthropometric measurement. Then analysis using the chi-square test and multivariate logistic regression. The variate analysis showed a significant relationship between basic immunization status, p-value 0.046, and family economic condition, p-value 0.029, with a stunting incident. Toddlers who did not receive complete immunization and came from families earning below the regional minimum wage had a single risk of stunting. However, multivariate analysis revealed that both variables were not statistically significant, although they show a protective tendency. In conclusion, incomplete basic immunization and low economic status are associated with stunting in bivariate analysis. Comprehensive interventions are needed to prevent stunting, particularly by increasing immunization coverage and supporting family economic welfare. Next, introduction. Stunting remains a major public health cancer in Indonesia, including in rural areas such as Talagasari Village. According to the 2022 Indonesia Nutrition Status Survey, the national prevalence of stunting stands at 21.6%, while in West Java Province and Tasikmalaya City, the rates are 20.2% and 22.4% respectively. In Kawalu, the surface area of the community health center, the prevalence rate 90.20% in 2023. The high stunting rate has serious implications such as cognitive development disorder, increasing risk of disease, and reduced future economic productivity. Contributing factors include incomplete immunization and low family economic condition, which are the primary focus of this study to understand and relationship between disease factor and stunting incident in the area, as well as to identify the most dominant factor influencing stunting incident. Next, material and method. This research made produce quantitative approach with an analytical, observational, and cross-sectional design. The population consisted of all toddlers in Talagasari Village, totaling 477 children. A sample of 83 children was taken using the sloping formula with a 10% margin of error. Data were collected through structural questionnaire and examination of KIA books to determine whether immunization status was complete or incomplete. The collected data were then analyzed using the chi-square test to see the relationship between variable and multivariate logistic regression to test the simultaneous effect of independent variable on stunting. Next, ratio. This study showed that toddlers with complete basic immunization experience led stunting, namely 22 children complete to 38 children with incomplete immunization, with a significant difference with p-value of 0.046. Similarly, infants from families with income will to or above the regional minimum wage had 10 children with stunting, showing a lower rate of stunting compared to families with incomes below the minimum regional wage, where 15 children had stunting, and this difference was also significant with a p-value of 0.2029. This is rather complete that complete immunization and better economic condition acts as protective factor against stunting in Talagasari Village. However, when the two variables were tested simultaneously using multivariate logistic regression, the result did not show a statistically significant effect, although they still showed protective relationship. The p-values were 0.330 for immunization, 236 for economic. Specifically, the study of one that complete immunization and better economic condition reduce the rate of stunting, but not statistical significant enough to be dominant factor. Next discussion, research in Talagasari Village showed that toddlers who do not receive complete basic immunization have a higher rate of stunting than those who do. Immunization plays an important role in strengthening children's immunity so that they can be protected from infection that interfere with nutrition absorption and growth. In addition, toddlers from economically disadvantaged families are also more prone to stunting due to limited access to nutrition, food, and health care. However, multivariate Analysis that simultaneously considered immunization and economic condition did not find a significant effect, although but showed tendency to reduce the risk of stunting. This is likely due to the limited sample size and the presence of other factors such as dietary pattern, parental education levels, and recurrent infection that were not analyzed. This is finding emphasizes that stunting is a multifactorial problem that requires are integrated approach, including basic immunization coverage, improving family economic condition, and providing nutrition and health education to the community. Collaborative efforts between the government, health worker, and the community are essential to effectively address the problem of stunting. Further, research with larger sample size and more comprehensive variable is recommended to better understand the factor contributing to stunting. Last conclusion, this study concluded that there is a significant relationship between incomplete basic immunization and poor family economic condition with stunting in toddler in Talagasari village based on bivariate analysis. Toddlers who did not receive complete immunization and came from families with incomes below the minimum wage had higher rates of stunting. However, multivariate analysis did not find a statistically significant effect of both factors simultaneously, although but showed a tendency to reduce the risk of stunting. This is finding emphasized that stunting is a multifactorial problem requiring a comprehensive approach, including improving basic immunization coverage, enhancing families' economic well-being, and implementing collaborative nutrition education by government, health worker, and the community. The conclusion my presentation of my research finding. I hope that this finding can make a positive contribution to effort to prevent stunting in the community. I would like to express my gratitude for your attention and for this opportunity. I am available to answer questions and discuss this topic further. Thank you for attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Okay, thank you very much, Intan, for your great presentations. So we have now reached our Q&A and discussion segment. So we have received some questions, but because of the time, we will select one for the question for you, Intan. So are you ready for the question, Intan? You are here? Okay, good. All right, for the question, why is the beyond economic barrier approach important in stunting research? Okay, again, why is the beyond economic barrier approach important in stunting research? Okay, you got it? The question, Intan?
Right.
Okay,
Thank you.
so just answer, please.
Okay, thank you for the question. It is important to understand that stunting is a multiple, so it cannot be explained by just one aspect alone. In the context of this study, the beyond economic barrier approach is very important because stunting is not only influenced by economic condition, but also by preventive health factors such as the completeness of basic immunization. By integrating analysis of immunization status and family economic resilience, this study provides a more comprehensive picture compared to previous studies, which typically focus a single variable. Therefore, the finding of this study underscore the need for holistic and sustainable intervention in effort to prevent stunting. That is the response can provide. I hope this explanation clarifies the matter and adds valuable insight for all of us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, for the question. Thank you very much again for the response. Okay, from Intan, yeah. Okay. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we have received many more questions exactly, but unfortunately, our time is limited. Some of the answers, unanswered question will be addressed by the speakers via WhatsApp chat group after the session. So if you still have any question, you can send by text to the WhatsApp group, okay? So in the end of this conference, so on behalf of the organizing committee, I would like to thank all speakers and participants for your valuable contributions to today's sessions. So we look forward to your actively participation in the upcoming session. So again, thank you very much and enjoy the rest of the conference. Okay, thank you very much, Upit. Thank you. But before we close, so we still have one moment for the photographs. Okay, so Rafi, can you help us to take the picture first? So all of us, please open the camera, please. Ari and Lilis, you can open your camera, please, to take the photo for a moment. Intan, so please open your camera, please. Buka kameranya, dibuka. Kita foto dulu. Oh, okay. So, okay, where is Intan? Intan, you are here? Oh, okay, yes. Okay, let me count the time, the number, okay? So 1, 2, 3, okay. Okay. Sudah, Rafi?
Sudah, Pak.
Okay, thank you very
One more,
much.
one more.
One more. Okay, one more. So again, 1, 2, 3, cheese. Your time? Okay, good. So I want to see your umtas, please. Okay, just like this. Okay. Yo, 1, 2, 3. Okay, good. Finish, Rafi? Complete? Okay.
Complete.
The picture is great. Okay, okay, okay. Okay, thank you very much for the time. So after this finish, so you can move to the main room first before you leave this meeting, okay?